I've got a lot of grandbabies, like a lot. And when it comes to finding a gift for each of them, it could add up. But this year, while I was making my way through Walmart, I realized I don't have to spend a lot to get the gifts they'll love.
An OPI mini mani set. I'm gonna do so much nail art.
Oh, yeah! A Lego set. Might own a Walla water bottle.
Ooh, and that's just half of them.
Shop great gifts they're sure to love for $25 and under at Walmart.
Whether you're ordering wings for the game, whipping up a 7-layer dip, or ordering pizza, there's something about football that makes you want to eat. And this football season, Uber Eats has the best deals on game day food. No matter what you're craving, from 2-for-1 pizza to buy one, get one wings, Uber Eats will be dropping new deals each week, all season long. Uber Eats, official on-demand delivery partner of the NFL. Order now. Terms and conditions apply. See app for details.
Okay, I have to tell you, I was just looking on eBay where I go for all kinds of things I love, and there it was.
That hologram trading card. One of the rarest, the last one I needed for my set. Shiny like the
designer handbag of my dreams. One of a kind. eBay had it, and now everyone's asking, ooh, where'd you get your
windshield wipers? eBay has all the parts that fit my car. No more annoying, just beautiful.
Whatever you love, find it on eBay. eBay. Things people love.
No brakes, no fear. The official British Speedway podcast.
Welcome along one final time in 2024. There's been lots going on in British Speedway behind the scenes. We've had the AGM. Not too many major changes, but we'll run you through what we do know and also some announcements for the various teams as well. Joining me to have a look through the news that we know so far and an early look at some of those lineups is British Speedway legend Kelvin Tatum. We're also going to have a look at some of the changes for the Speedway Grand Prix series in 2025. Some quite big changes actually to both qualifying and how the finals are going to work, which could certainly mix things up a bit in Kelvin's opinion. And we'll look ahead to the Championship and the National League as well and look at some of the sides that have been assembled so far. So, let's have a look and see how things are shaping up for 2025 on No Brakes, No Fear, the final one of the year.
No Brakes, No Fear, the official British Speedway podcast.
Welcome to No Brakes, No Fear, the official British Speedway podcast. I can confidently say this will be the last one of 2024. I'm Ian Brannan. Along with me this time, once again, I'm pleased to say that Kelvin Tatum is able to join us to take a look at what's happening in the Row Motor All Premiership for 2025. We'll also have a look at the Cab Direct Championship later, and in between all of that, we'll also look at the Speedway Grand Prix series, because some big changes for the Grand Prix in 2025 as well, so we'll get Kelvin's opinions on that shortly. But let's bring him in. Actually, he's having his winter hibernation at the moment and peeking your head out of your burrow for a bit back into the Speedway world. Kelvin, I guess like many of us, you must be starting to get the sort of pangs of missing it a little bit and withdrawal symptoms, and looking forward to getting going again.
Absolutely, yeah. I'm looking forward to Christmas, and happy Christmas to everybody. It's as I say, with all the information coming out, looking forward to seeing the fixture list. But we'll be racing. Obviously, we've got a fair while to wait for the Grand Prix. It's not until May we start. But as I say, I'm generally, once I've recharged the batteries, I'm pretty keen to get going.
Yeah, and it will be here sooner than later, but there's lots going on at the moment in Speedway. Many of the clubs have already revealed their hand as far as the teams are concerned. Let's have a look then at the news from the AGM first up for the Premiership. It's the same clubs again: Bellevue, Birmingham, Ipswich, Kings Lynn, Leicester, Oxford and Sheffield. Points limit of 40 points for the top six, plus a rising star. And there's also been the draw done for the Knockout Cup as well. And maybe this is a place to start, actually, Kelv, because something interesting out of this. When I read the teams out, you'll be able to spot it. So this is the draw for the Knockout Cup. Birmingham versus Leicester. Poole versus Sheffield, Kings Lynn versus Oxford, Bellevue versus Ipswich, ties to be raced all in the same week. Semi-finals will be Birmingham or Leicester versus Poole or Sheffield, and Kings Lynn or Oxford versus Bellevue or Ipswich. So no buys in the first round of the Knockout Cup because the Poole Pirates, as I guess not just league champions, but also they were the treble winners in the Championship, have been invited to submit a team for the Premiership Knockout Cup. They're going to do that. There will be changes to the sides to sort of bolster their lineup in some form to make them more competitive, up to a Premiership standard, I guess you'd say. But an interesting development there to see Poole dipping their toe back into Premiership waters once again, because they've been down in the Championship for a little while now, and race nights really dominating things for them, and unless race nights change, they're not really interested in competing in the Premiership on a full-term basis.
Yeah, which is a shame, because obviously the Poole Pirates are a huge name in Speedway, and they've been an incredibly successful team over, at least 2 decades, since Matt Ford and now Danny Ford, Neil Middleditch, obviously being the team manager. They've done remarkably well. And they are a winning machine, whatever league they run in. I think the key to me for that is to make sure that they've got a strength, because I see, you've told me that they're drawn against Sheffield in the first round, who have got the Holder brothers and Ty Woofenden. They've got a half-sensible team, Sheffield. So, I just hope that the Poole Pirates can actually field a team that can compete, because otherwise they don't want to be turned over and embarrassed. There's no way they want that. And I'm sure that Matt and Danny Ford will be very keen to make sure that that isn't the case. But ride availability for 1 meeting or 2 meetings, I'm slightly confused about, will it be the same lineup for both matches, home and away, or will it be changeable? They are up against it, Ian, in that regard, because they're not going to have their normal team unit. It's guns for hire coming in, and they're going to keep their fingers crossed that at home at Wimborne Road, or when they go to Allerton, they're going to have riders that can compete with 3 world-class riders and Josh Pickering, who's bloody good for Sheffield these days. So I like it. It's great to see the Pirates back at the highest level, albeit in the Knockout Cup, but let's hope that they can field a really good team that makes it a competitive night. Because I think there's clearly lots of interest in that.
Yeah, no, it's going to be interesting, and I think there will be some anomalies as well. And Anders Rowe, I think, is going to be a rider that's effectively racing for both teams, but I think his Premiership team take priority in that. So yeah, it's going to be an interesting one to watch, interesting experiment. The only other real change is, well, it's not really a change, but I think there's going to be more racing on Mondays. We'll talk about this maybe on and off, but Poland are going to be doing a few more meetings for their second division of Extraliga, so sort of their second tier of, Extraliga is the top tier. You've got Extraliga 2, which is the next one down, and then you've got Division 2, which is the third tier of that, but it's still a pretty handy level. So they're racing a couple of meetings on Thursday nights. They're trying to work it so there's no clashes, but obviously racing on a Monday, that's kind of your safe zone. Poland have no call over British Speedway on a Monday night, so I think where possible, when we've got bank holidays, which we'll have quite a few of in April and May and so on, to try and do a few double headers there as well. So you could be busy, Kelv, on bank holidays, getting back to trolling up and down the motorway between meetings. I'm not sure if you're going to be double heading them on Eurosport or not, but certainly the riders will be.
Yeah. It'll be interesting to see what the fixture list brings, and obviously I would think the fixture list is not too far away. They're pretty disciplined with that now. They get that out. I think they probably will want it out before Christmas, but it'll be interesting to see. Obviously, those Thursday nights with Poland running in the Extraliga 2 doesn't do us any favours. Irrespective, that's going to be slightly awkward. We already see Kings Lynn moving their race night to a Monday to alleviate that potential clash, because there are a lot of riders in the Premiership that ride in Extraliga 2, quite a lot of them. So I just hope that the Poles behave and they don't suddenly start introducing loads of meetings on Thursdays and rain-offs and God knows what, and it all gets rather messy, because that will interfere with our programme significantly, and they will put pressure on riders, as they always do, if they feel that they need to have them back. And obviously economically, and the financial rewards there generally are are big, so in Speedway terms. So let's hope that doesn't present too much of a problem. But I know it's been of some concern, and I know that Phil Morris has had to broker a deal effectively, because I think where you've suggested that there are just 2 meetings, I think when they first announced it was going to be a full programme, and that would have impacted on our league hugely. So there has been some compromise. So that's it. I'm pleased that we've got the 7 teams back. Obviously, Birmingham, there was a big question mark over whether they were going to continue. They are. If I'm right, they've got 4 new signings. And looks like they might have a completely new team.
Yes.
Let's hope that they can enjoy a better season than they did last year, because they'd struggled. The Oxford Spires, who they were the nearly boys, weren't they? They were in and around the top 4 for a long time, but then fell away. Maciej Janowski coming back. You've got to believe Janowski's going to be better this time around than he was in 2024. So, and what's that signing? Peter Kilderman being signed by Oxford. I'm right, aren't I? I'm not.
Yeah, that's right.
I haven't got that wrong.
Yeah. Definitely right.
So Peter Kilderman, we haven't seen him since he rode for Swindon. Very exciting rider. He sort of disappeared off the map a bit, certainly internationally. But on his day, if he can recapture some of that form he showed for Swindon, he'll be a handy signing for the Spires. And I've got to believe that, he comes in on a very low average that you've told me. I wouldn't have known his average, but it's a very low average. So they've still got room for a big hitter there if they can find one. And so, I'm hopeful. I'm hopeful that the season will be competitive.
We'll just have a look through the different lineups. We talk about Oxford there. They need the big hitter. And for Oxford, really, was like the last season was just, it was going okay, wasn't it, for a first season back at this level. They threw a few surprises in there, as in particularly in the early season, but they just ran out of steam with injuries, really, didn't they? And sort of fell away, and that allowed Leicester, wasn't it? Leicester got into the playoffs sort of late doors.
Yeah, well, Leicester really got on a roll, didn't they? They got on a roll and they usurped them. Bellevue, Sheffield, they potentially might have slipped out, but in the end, Oxford were the ones that became vulnerable. They ran out of steam at a vital moment. So, but when you say they're looking for a number one, I think they've got a number one. They've signed a number one, and Maciej Janowski, if he can reproduce, previous form, Maciej Janowski should be a team leader. I think a number one. He struggled a bit to adapt. You could see how hard he was trying. He just wasn't consistent off the start, and readapting himself to British Speedway, it took him a while. He got better towards the back end of the season. And if he can start like that, then potentially he would be somebody to put his hand up for that position. But it'll be interesting to see who they get for their number 6.
Yeah, a few familiar faces in that Oxford Spires lineup, one of which is Charles Wright. I caught up with him, and he thinks it's going to be another very competitive season in 2025.
Yeah, it seems to be getting stronger every season with these top boys coming over to the UK again now, and it's really good for British Speedway. And it is tough, and I know it's tougher every single year. But no, you can't really pick a winner now. It's so close every meeting, so it's hard to say who's going to go to the top.
You just never know what's going to happen as well, do you? You can look at these teams on paper now, but that's going to be all out the window come sort of June, July, or whenever, isn't it, as well?
Yeah, that's it. So you can only see it's either the team on fire or who's gelling well as a team. And Bellevue finished, I think, 3rd in the league, and they ended up winning it come playoffs because they were the team in form at the time. So, it's all to play for.
So the Oxford Spires lining up then with Charles Wright plus Rowan Tungate, Eric Riss, Maciej Janowski, Peter Kilderman and rising star Luke Killeen. At the time of recording this, they still have one big place to fill. It'll be their number 1 slot. 8 plus points, 8.9 I think to play with there. So that is going to be a big hitter, at least in theory, coming into the Oxford Spires lineup. Ipswich Witches then. Let's talk about them, Kelv, because they were running away with things as far as the league was concerned, and then injury struck not just to Jason Doyle but to Emil Sayfutinov as well, and ultimately they ended up missing out on any silverware in 2024. But they've put pretty much the same side back together again, and they bring in Tom Brannan as well.
I think they look fabulous. I think the signing of Tom Brannan is a masterstroke alongside Sayfutinov and Doyle. I think it's brilliant.
Yeah, a big signing, of course. He's a rider very much on the up, as we know. We've seen his performances for Great Britain, and looking back at his record with Birmingham had one of their final meetings, if not the final meeting of the season, away at Vauxhall, and Tom Brannan on his last appearance at Vauxhall scored 14 plus 3. And that was from 6 rides. He only dropped 1 point, actually, so almost a paid max there. Clearly, that's caught the attention of Chris Louis and Richie Hawkins. But that combined with the rest of the side, it's a consistent lineup otherwise to last year, and a side that otherwise looked pretty unstoppable until those injuries came along.
The only one that's gone is Keenan Rue. Keenan Rue is going to go to Birmingham. And I think they would have been reluctant to let Keenan go because they'd sort of developed him over a couple of seasons. But somebody had to go because that's the nature of the way the averages work. But when you look at it, and I think Danny King would have been looked at. Maybe he might have been released. He's a stalwart of the club. But if he's in and around Brennan, Doyle, Sayfutinov, you've got to believe, and Brennan, I think that top 5 potentially, and Adam Ellis is still there, is it, of course, as well. And Dan Thompson. I mean, Dan Thompson's quite useful. I think when I look at the other teams, I think that team to me stands out. It looks better than the Bellevue and Sheffield. It's going to be close, but they look on paper right now, they look the best.
Well, recently was the Redcar Bears team reveal, and I grabbed a chat with Danny King, who's going to be once again racing for the Bears in the Championship. More on that later in the podcast, but had a chat with him about life at Ipswich as well, and he thinks, and I think he agrees with you, Kelvin, that the Witches are stronger in 2025.
Yeah, I agree. I think we've got a solid team. I thought we had a great team last year. Unfortunately injury struck and it didn't work out. But for the majority of the season, we were at the top of the table. So that's the way Speedway goes sometimes. But as you say, one change this year, and fantastic to bring Tom in. He's a brilliant rider. He's up and coming, and I think he's getting better and better every year. And if he continues to do that, I think it's going to strengthen us even more and give us more of a chance to win that league.
You never know how team building is going to go and all that, but I think to get the signatures of Jason Doyle and Emil Sayfutinov again, that is a big statement for any team, isn't it? But you look down the lineup, yourself included, it's if you're making fantasy speedway teams, it's not far off it, really, is it?
No, I think it's massive for the sport, not just Ipswich Speedway, that Jason and Emil are back in the league. And I think it says a lot about the club that they're able to retain these guys year in, year out. It's just brilliant for everyone, and certainly for myself. I've built relationships with these guys now, and they're great to have in the team. So yeah, I'm very excited they're back, and I'm excited about the whole season.
How many years is it now with Ipswich overall? It must be getting on.
Yeah, 15 maybe.
Yeah,
something like
it's
that.
well into the teens, isn't it?
Yeah,
now?
it's my 10th season in a row.
Yeah.
It would be the 11th, but obviously COVID didn't count. So 10th season in a row coming up.
As well as the headline acts, you've got a great supporting cast now. Dan Thompson, of course, now did so well last season. He's no longer classed as a rising star, so he's had to go into the main body of the team. But it's great he managed to get Jordan Jenkins to drop down in that position to sort of maintain that continuity there too.
Yeah, we're really pleased about that. We wanted to keep both guys, and being able to do it's just fantastic. Dan really took big strides last year, and it thoroughly deserves to be out of the rising star, and he's holding his own. So, and Jordan, I thought he did really well. He struggled a little bit early on, but he finished the season fantastically. So he's going to be a bit of a trump card for us, I believe, at the bottom end.
And also talk about a few track changes as well. It's a track you know very well, Vauxhall. Tell us about how that might affect things from a riding point of view.
I don't think it's going to affect it too much. I think it's just going to help a little bit. There's a few cambers on the track which, unfortunately, you can't really use if you come in a little bit wide in the corners and you're over the camber, then you actually go backwards a bit, you lose speed. So the idea is to create a bit more consistent banking from curb to fence and get rid of that camber.
So there's Danny King, and talking about some of the track changes, but also the team very much as it was last year, but just that change of Tom Brennan coming in. And you feel, Kelvin, that Tom Brennan is looking to make the stride now to the next level of Speedway. We've seen Brady Kurtz do it, for example, get into the Grand Prix, get into those big major international events as an individual rider. There's no reason why he can't do that. He was in the Grand Prix Challenge in the end, and he had a bit of experience in the Grand Prix, of course, racing in Cardiff. So he's got that under his belt now, and now he looks like a rider looking to kick on in 2025.
Yeah, he is, and he's a rider that's still improving. And I think that he sort of had a season at Birmingham last year that treading water, really. I think now going to Ipswich, I think that environment there, I think that will only benefit him and he will benefit their team. So Ipswich look really good. I think the champions, there's been a swap there and there with the brothers Cook, obviously Zach coming in. Ben going off to Kings Lynn. They'll be strong. I think that, they won the league, even though Jamie Leedsey had a poor start to the season. Kurtz and Bewley obviously held them together. They weren't great away from home, actually, at times last year, Bellevue, particularly early doors. But they turned it on in style towards the back end of the season. I don't think if Ipswich had been at full strength, anybody would have had the better of them. I really don't. I think Ipswich, if they'd had their two top riders, they would have walked it. I think they would have been walked it. I think the other teams weren't at the same level. But actually, in the end, Bellevue got the better of Leicester, who just ran out of steam. Leicester ran out of steam in the playoffs, and they just weren't the same. And of course, like Bewley winning 10 out of 10 races was sensational. But I think Bellevue will be competitive. Sheffield will be right there. Leicester, I think Richard Lawson going is not good news. I think Richard Lawson was one of them sort of riders at Leicester that you could always rely on. Max Frick can be a little bit hot and cold, but Lawson always got points. He goes to Kings Lynn, and I think that's a benefit to Kings Lynn. I think you're going to have Luke Becker at times last year was hit and miss. So those guys like Ryan Douglas, Sam Masters, Luke Becker are going to have to be consistent. They're going to have to find. And Craig Cook, if he can recapture some of his previous form, is a fabulous rider. But we haven't seen that for a little while, Ian. So I'm not sure the lineup for Leicester is quite as good as it was for this season, for next season.
Kyle Howarth, of course, returns to Leicester. He last rode with Leicester when they were in the Championship, and then he was captain, and they were winning all sorts of stuff. So he's a bit of a fan favourite, I suppose, but a big change there for him, leaving Sheffield, where he's been the captain for many years now as well. So they had to make a change, though, Sheffield, didn't they, in order to keep their lineup with the top boys, I guess you'd say, with the Holder brothers and Woofy. And then it was a choice of, by the look of it, Pico or Kyle Howarth, and we've gone with Josh Pickering, and then they bring in Leon Flint, Anders Rowe and Daniel Hume. Daniel Hume's ridden for Sheffield in the past, I think, for a time. Anders Rowe, of course, well known to Simon Stead from Great Britain duties, as is Leon Flint. So two exciting upcoming young British riders there in that team, and for them, they're going to learn a stack, aren't they? And Sheffield, again, looking at a reasonably handy outfit.
Yes, they are. They have some very attractive names in their team. And I think it's a big season for Leon Flint, who, again, last season, obviously leaving Wolverhampton, going over to Birmingham, didn't really kick on. I think Leon Flint's at a stage now where he needs to, and maybe the move now to Sheffield could see him do so. I'd like to think so, because he's got ability. Saw him in SGP2 at times. He looked quite useful. But he's kind of stagnated in the last season, and I'm sure himself he'll want to, be... kicking around guys like Holder, Woofenden, the Holder boys, Woofenden, and even Josh Pickering, who's a real live wire. He's you know, I would think most of the time you're going to be happy to be around Pico. If you're not having a great night, you might not want to chat to him because he's always bubbly. But you've got to say, because he might get on your on your nerves a bit. But he's a great bloke. I mean, Pickering's form last year was just outstanding, wasn't it? You know, he was he was actually at times the inspiration for that team. He really was. He was the one that turned on the style. But I think Sheffield will go close, definitely. They're a handy-looking team.
I think as well for Leon Flynn, I think that going to Sheffield will be good for him. He's grown up, of course, around Berwick and rode for Berwick for many years. Again, a fast track, obviously different shape to Sheffield, but he likes winding it on. He's a ballsy rider. He's not scared of going fast into those corners, which, you know, that can face some riders at Sheffield. They've talked about that. It is a very fast track, and I think that's his kind of background. And I think the big, fast, open tracks are more his scene than the tight technical ones. Possibly.
He did okay at Wolverhampton, which he may have chosen to go there to actually improve his technical skills, because Monmouth Green was a challenging track in that regard. But yeah, I can't disagree with you. Clearly, Leon doesn't worry about going quick because Berwick is fast. And Sheffield is. Sheffield had some issues last year with the track. You know, they had a few crashes there that were tough. You know, that one was Seifutinov. I think Chris Holder had one there that was a little bit tough as well. But I'm sure they'll work on that. But yeah, that team looks good. As I say, the champions, Bellevue, look good. I think Tate Zisk, coming back from injury, I'd like to think he'll go well. Mulford down at the bottom there looks like he's going okay. I'm not quite sure whether they didn't keep getting old, the Finnish rider.
Oh, Vulas. I think it was because
because he was actually quite good, anti-Vulas.
Yeah, I think it was because they signed Tate Zischke, and he had that crash in his.
Oh, was it Zischke? I always go Zisk.
Zischke, I'm told.
Zischke.
Yeah,
okay.
You pronounce the E. He had this crash, awkward crash, painful one, where the chain adjuster went to places it shouldn't have gone, and so he was the original signing, and then they of course brought Vulas in, who's Tate's sort of teammate at Workington, ironically or whatever, but he came in as a replacement. So I think they sort of felt that they owed Tate more than a couple of heats to sort of prove himself, having signed him. So I think that's where it's sort of gone back to. But of course, you know, he's an Aussie as well, isn't he? And Mark Lemon obviously knows him well, and so on.
Sure.
But
I think I want to say something about Kings Lynn actually before we start wrapping things up, because Kings Lynn have obviously had some seasons that have been ones to forget, and they have got a team on paper. When I looked at it prior to having this chit chat with you, that looks pretty good actually. They've got a lot of experience in there. You know, they've got Chris Harris maybe down at reserve. He's 40. Richard Lawson in his late 30s. Niels Christian Everson in his early 40s. And Jankovic, obviously an up-and-coming rider, Grand Prix star. They got Ashton Baujan, who's definitely got potential. I'm trying to think of somebody else is in that team.
Ben Cook, you mentioned him.
Ben Cook,
yeah.
That's it. Ben Cook, absolutely right. So I think that's a team that's going to surprise a few. If they ride to their potential, Ian, that could be quite a handy team.
So here is the full lineup for the Kings Lynn Stars. Plenty of familiar faces and one or two additions as well, and in one case a returning rider. We've got Jank Vek, Niels Christian Everson, Nikolai Klint, Chris Harris finally makes the move to Kings Lynn colours, and Richard Lawson returns as well with a new addition of Ben Cook. Ashton Baujan as rising star. As it's turned out, Ben Cook actually starts at number one in that team, due to his average just being slightly, but there's not much in it. It's a solid unit throughout. And I think as well, you know, you look at that and they're all... I'm getting kind of Peterborough 2021 vibes because
Dad's Army,
it's Dad's Army. It's got that vibe about it. You've got Rob Lyon, okay, of course the team manager doing it all again, and you're always going to have a reasonably big hitter at reserve because they're going to start with Chris Harris at reserve with Ashton Bowden. Chris Harris is going to be riding with Ashton Bowden for Glasgow because Chris Harris is starting at 1. Bowden will be starting at 2 for them. So they'll be out as heat number 1 side by side for Glasgow in the championship when they get going. So that pairing, they're going to be riding together a lot in both leagues. So I think clever move there. But as you say, if it's not Chris Harris, it's going to be Nikolai Klint or it's going to be Ben Cook or Jan Kvek. You're going to have you're not a novice at number 6.
It's going to be a big hitter down at reserve, and that's what we saw with Peterborough, wasn't it? We saw Hans Anderson was there, Scotty Nichols was there. You had former internationals all riding down at reserve, and in the end, they were scoring heaps of points. 15, 16, 17 points out of reserve, so they were winning matches for them. So I think Kings Lynn are an interesting case, and as you rightly say, no out and out number 1. There was a potential you could see Jan Kvek become the number 1 with his second season kicking on, because he pretty much, he hit the ground. I think I was there the night he made his debut actually for Kings Lynn, and he won a race that night, won a couple of races I think, and to be honest, he made the transition and made the switch into British Speedway pretty smoothly. He had a few off nights, which you're going to have because every track was brand new to him, but all in all, he adapted well. So, Kings Lynn are definitely worth a mention, and you would not be at all surprised for them to make the playoffs. Not at all.
And it would be good for them to do it because they've had such a bad time of it the last few years. They've started a season with a team that looks all right, and then it all falls apart, and you get a few defeats on the board. Riders start leaving or whatever. And I think it would be just nice, for the Kings Lynn fans just to have a steady old season, mid-table, get yourself into the playoffs, get a few extra meetings, and then from there, as we see, you never know from that point. But I think it would be good, and they've got a decent team there, I think. And from what I hear as well, that there is a good dynamic already. These riders, a lot of them, of course, rode with each other last year. Those coming in are, riders that are not going to cause a problem. I think it's a sort of a good bunch of people
they're
as well.
Riders like riders, riders like Harris and Lawson.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? They just get on with it.
That's what I mean.
What I mean? They don't make a big fuss. They just crack on. And Niels Christian Evenson's been around for a long time. I think Ashton Bowden should gain a lot of experience. So they're going to be. Let's hope that they have a good season, as you rightly say. I think the people, the fans, they've been through torture in recent seasons. So up there in Norfolk, I think potentially they've got the signs of having a decent season.
Birmingham, we've not touched on them fully. They've got a new lineup, and obviously they had some issues last season. So I'm not sure the full lineup yet, but we know that it is Jason Edwards, who was the first to be announced as the rising star, Tobias Musielak, Mate Zagar, Keenan Rue and Jonas Jepsen are the riders named so far. And obviously a couple of eye-catching riders there. Tobias Musielak, of course, he's going to be starting, I think, as the big hitter, the number 1. Mate Zagar comes in, obviously, with much pedigree over the years. Maybe not in the last year or so, but and Keenan Rue was a decent rider that made way to allow Tom Brennan to come in at Ipswich. So that's how they're looking at the moment.
Yeah, obviously, they need to expand upon that. But Zagar and Musielak are both quality riders. Musielak has been, he led the team at Sheffield for a number of years. It didn't work out last year at Kings Lynn. I guess he made way for Woofenden, but no. You don't want to see teams just continually struggle. You just don't. You want them to be able to sort of build a team. But rider availability and getting the right blend of riders is never easy. And they are a little bit behind the 8 ball, aren't they? Because they haven't, the other teams are almost there and they aren't. They've got 3 riders to sign. So I don't know who they'll be looking at. But The problem Birmingham have got is the future for them. That will go through a rider's mind. To me, if you're going into a club where there's it's common knowledge that might be the only season for you, you're gonna just, I don't know if that makes for a great feel about the team, particularly if you get off to a poor start. You sort of think, oh well, who went there last year from Wolverhampton? Oh God, I'm doing it again. Didn't have a great season. Actually, Steve Worrell, he had some time on the sidelines as well. It didn't work for him, did it? He didn't have a great season, and he was going well at Wolverhampton, and Stevie was way better than what happened there, didn't he? Just, I don't know, he had an ear infection, didn't he? He had an ear problem, which clearly was out of left field and it interrupted his form, but he didn't really get to grips with Perry Barr, I don't think. So let's hope that they have a more productive season this time around. But there's pressure on there. And Chris Adams, who I think Ermolenko has stepped down from being team manager. Chris Adams is now going to be in charge. Obviously, Pete Adams' dad was very accomplished as a superb team manager. So Chris Adams must have inherited some of that DNA. So you'd like to think he'll be on top of it. So, look, I've got no skin in the game. I want them to be. I want them to go half sensible, but they're gonna have to sign some sensible riders, aren't they?
Yeah, Birmingham still with a couple to announce, and apart from the remaining rider for Oxford, otherwise that is the Row Motor All Premiership for 2025 complete. Certainly for how things will begin the season. As we know, there'll be twists and turns ahead. Coming up then in the next part of our podcast, No Brakes, No Fear, the official British Speedway podcast, we turn our eye to World Speedway and the Speedway Grand Prix series, how that is going to shape up in 2025. And we'll have a look at one or two changes to how things are going to work as well in the next year. That's coming up in the next part of No Brakes, No Fear.
Hey, it's Austin James. If you're like me, trying to live your best life while living with diabetes, you can relate to worrying if you're doing a good job managing your diabetes. I use the Freestyle Libre 3 Plus sensor to get real-time glucose readings and see the impact of every meal and activity to make better decisions. The Freestyle Libre 3 Plus sensor can help me live life with diabetes on my own terms, and it gives me more time for the things I love, like being a dad and a musician. Now this is progress. Learn more at freestylelibre.us.
For prescription only. Safety info found at freestylelibre.us.
Looking for a pickup truck to get just about anything done? Look no further. The Chevy Silverado EV isn't just the most powerful Silverado ever, with next-level towing capability and technology. It also offers game-changing versatility with the available multi-flex midgate and tailgate, which means Silverado EV helps you carry large, bulky, and oddly shaped items up to nearly 11 feet in length. Chevrolet. Together, let's drive. Visit Chevrolet.com to learn more.
'Tis the season to share the joy with the Instax Mini 40 Instant Camera. With a classic design, you can capture each and every festive moment and print them out on the spot. Make this holiday season unforgettable and gift the Instax Mini 40 Instant Camera. Don't just take, give. Visit instaxus.com to shop.
No Brakes, No Fear. The official British Speedway podcast.
Welcome back. I'm Ian Brannan. Now, in this section, we're going to talk a bit about the Speedway Grand Prix series with Kelvin Tatum. If you want to hear more of this chat, then you need to listen to Kelvin's own podcast, which is called Tatum Talks, which will be out subsequent to this, where we go into a bit more detail on the Grand Prix series. But just to highlight a couple of particular issues with the Grand Prix as we head into 2025, we'll bring you some of that chat now. Kelvin, looking back, say a year ago, we were talking about sprint races which came into the Grand Prix series, and there was two particular events in Wrocław and in Cardiff where there were extra World Championship points available. As it turned out, Dan Bewley won both of those sprint races, but they're being expanded in 2025, going to 6 rounds. Also a change in how the qualifying is going to work, either before the event on the day or on a couple of the events. Those qualifying events are going to be the day before, Cardiff being one of those. Talk more about that shortly. But I think it's fair to say that yourself, Kelvin, you were fairly sceptical about the sprint races, but actually, as they turned out, they delivered some drama, and I think you actually became a fan in the end.
Yeah. Well, yes, you're right. I think Chris and I were both sceptical of it. You know, it was, do we really, first of all, a sprint race, it isn't actually a sprint race, is it? The race is still over 4 laps. So we were a little bit confused by that. I think sometimes the terminology and some of the slogans that Speedway are using, I would argue we need to be a bit more original. We're just picking up slogans and headings from other sports. But that aside, that's a small gripe. Actually, the sprint races were really good. And from a broadcast point of view, it actually brought something, it brought jeopardy to what generally can be quite a straightforward period of time for people just racing for a start number on the evening. So from that point of view, it became, right from the word go in Warsaw last year, when they came out for their second free run, when you knew that the times then were really important, you could see that guys that had been slow the first time out were throwing the kitchen sink at the setups. And you saw some guys actually turn it around and make the race. So, yeah, I've got no surprise at all that the FIM have included 6 times. And I think from a TV point of view, and to try and drag people in, I think it's a good thing. I really do. We can talk further about how they're going to do it, because it's obviously not going to be the same as it was previously. But 6 sprint races out of 10, it's a lot. It's a lot, percentage-wise, over 50%, with 4 points maximum up for grab each time. You know, obviously Dan Bewley got 8 points out of it last year, as you rightly say, he won both. So it can be very useful points. Very useful points.
Let's have a look at I'll read this verbatim. This is the word from SGP, so how it's going to work. So 2025 riders will have 6 chances to earn extra FIM Speedway Grand Prix World Championship points as they battle it out in an exciting new-look qualifying session with an epic head-to-head format. One of the major changes introduced to add even more intensity to the competition. Now, head-to-head showdowns is the phrase. Qualifying will get underway at an earlier time at most events on the Friday afternoon at the Warsaw and Cardiff events. It'll kick off with 2 free practice runs for each rider, known as FP1 and FP2. Are you seeing similarities with F1 and MotoGP here? The Speedway GP stars will then be drawn into pairs for a 60-second head-to-head showdown in Q1. The fastest rider of those 2 will advance to Q2, where they will face another head-to-head, with obviously another rider who also qualified. The winner of each Q2 battle in Landshut, Warsaw, Manchester, Gorzów, Cardiff and Wrocław will then enter a 4-rider sprint race, with the winner earning 4 Speedway GP World Championship points. 3 for the rider in second, 2 for third and 1 for fourth. The sprint race winner will also earn first choice of starting positions at the SGP events, with the second, third and fourth place riders and so on to select next. No sprint races in Prague, Melilla, Riga and Vojens, because they've got SGP2 or SGP3 or what have you going on as well. The qualifying session at these rounds will culminate in Q3, all 4 riders taking to the track at the same time for 60 seconds, bidding to set the fastest lap time. So no World Championship points on the line in Q3. So it's working differently at different places, but those key ones are going to be Landshut, so kicking off the season with one. Warsaw, Manchester, Gorzów, Cardiff and Wrocław are really going to be the focal events where the GP points are going to be up for grabs.
So if you could win 6 sprint races, then that's 24 World Championship points available to you. So, yeah, handy points. Whether it's too much, I think it is 1 too much. I think I'd go for 5. But as I say, from my perspective, purely from a selfish point of view, it brings that intensity and jeopardy to the broadcast, which pretty much was dull when it's only for start positions. And you got 3 runs and the track really doesn't do very much. So I think I like it. I think it really does jazz it up. We'll see how it works. And those heads-to-heads, I think 60 seconds, realistically, you're going to get 3 laps. You're going to get 3 laps to try and actually maximise your tyre and the track at that particular time. Whether we'll see riders riding into each other and crashing and literally, I mean, there's all sorts of scenarios because I don't quite know how, literally, are they released like, you know, like balls coming into the arena and they're literally handlebar to handlebar, desperately trying to get the best of the track. I'm not entirely sure. You know, those scenarios I think could be, I'm really quite looking forward to see exactly how that works in Lancashire as that pit gate opens, because 60 seconds isn't a long time.
No.
And you could waste half of that very, very easily.
Yeah, that's it. I assume it will be like, as it has been, you know, rolling start and then they, you know, they cross the line at full tilt and then your time starts for as long as you've got rather than from the tapes, because obviously that would be different. But yeah, I think it's going to spice it up. And then for these big events, you know, the biggest events on the calendar, Warsaw and Cardiff, it's going to add an extra event for the Friday. They're trying to make more of the Friday afternoon, get quite a lot of fans in there. There's no other event going on in the area that weekend. Previously, the championship pairs has been a thing, previously in Somerset and then Oxford recently. That's now happening at the start of the season. So the whole weekend in Cardiff is clear. You've got no other event to attend in Speedway. It's all on that. So they're trying to get a lot of people to go in, and I think they had a decent crowd. I think they had a few thousand in the stadium, even though it doesn't look that big because the stadium's so cavernous at Cardiff. But there's a few thousand turned up on the Friday. They're hoping that they can add to that, get in there, and you're going to be watching an actual heat of racing and a bit of drama as well, and you know, make the most of it with no other Speedway distractions. I think is the idea certainly for Cardiff and I guess for Warsaw.
Yeah, I'm positive about it. I really am. You know, like last year I was sort of like a bit grumpy about it. I'm thinking, oh really? But then actually as it transpired, I took to it. I think we all have. And I think from a spectator point of view and for a broadcasting point of view, it's a win-win. And, you know, even building up to the sprint race, you know, watching the 16 riders go head-to-head initially and then the remaining 8 going head-to-head and just seeing who stays in and who stays out. I think you're going to get some surprises at times. You'll get guys that actually become very adept at it, that are prepared to risk quite a lot for one lap. And what I mean for that, for people that sort of think, well, what do you mean? Well, you can actually put a setup on the bike that is actually quite difficult to race, but actually potentially could be very fast over one lap. So it will be very interesting to see the psychology and the strategy that riders bring to it as they go through the season. So, as I say, all these different scenarios are now coming on. Just from what I've said, from a bit of a giggle point of view about the fact, are they going to literally be riding over each other as they come out onto the track to get the better of the track that they are presented with, to how they actually set the equipment up to make sure, and there are going to be some fabulous head-to-heads. There's going to be, isn't there? You know, some of the better qualifiers, like Dan Bewley, Max Frick is quite often up there. You know, to me, Smarslick, when he's on form, is up there. You imagine, you know, Smarslick and Bewley going head-to-head in Q2. It's going to be fantastic. You know, that's even before the sprint race. So I do think that I applaud that. I do, because I think it is finally we're going to get something out of the qualifying that should be enough for people to really get engaged with.
Right, well, let's talk about the riders that are going to be taking part in this in 2025, Kelvin, because a bit of controversy here, and we'll go into this in more detail in your own podcast. For those that want to hear that, Tatum Talks, look out for that. But the full lineup then, top 6, automatically qualify: Bartosz Smarslick, Robert Lambert, Freddie Lindgren, Dan Bewley, Martin Vasulik and Jack Holder were the qualifiers. And then we've got the winners of the challenge. So going through from the SGP Challenge in Pardubice were Dominik Kubera, the only Polish rider outside of Bartosz Smarslick to be in the Grand Prix series. We've also got Max Frick, who was a qualifier. Anders Thompson came through the SGP Challenge, so he's back in. And Brady Kurtz as well, of the Bellevue Aces, also a fully fledged Grand Prix rider. And then you've got the wild cards, and this is where the question marks come in. Oh, there's one other one actually. Andrei Lebedevs is in as the SEC champion. Then the wild cards, Jason Doyle in as a wild card. Mikkel Mikkelsen, who was unfortunate not to qualify automatically with his injury that he received at the end of the season. And then you've got the question marks, I guess, here with Kai Hülkenberg and Jan Kvek, who have got their place back in the Grand Prix series as wild cards. Now, this is where the debate really comes in. A lot of people making calls for Emil Sayfutdinov and Artem Laguta to be back in the series, but they're not. Your thoughts, Kelv?
It looks to me like it was a power struggle. I think it was FIM trying to sort of re-establish some authority in what's going on. Poland clearly having a huge influence over everything that goes on. And in the end, they are going to be particularly unhappy because they haven't got many riders. We've got 4 Australian riders in the series, and there is only 2 Poles, and there are 3 Polish rounds. So you don't have to be Einstein to figure out that something's gone on. Something has gone on. So, I was fully expecting Patrick Dudek to be put in. I'm a little bit surprised that Leon Madsen has missed out. I think Leon Madsen was a little unfortunate. Kai Hülkenberg and Jan Kvek, I think, are very fortunate to be in the series. Very fortunate. They didn't really do anything. Jan Kvek, he's young enough. He'll come back. Hülkenberg is a fully developed rider. He's 30, 31. Unless I'm very much mistaken, I can't see him suddenly becoming a world beater. And he didn't really... It's difficult because you don't want to be too disparaging against riders. They're good riders, really good riders. I think Kvek has got a really good future, no question about it. But are they the best riders that should be in the series? I would say no. There are better riders that could be in that lineup to make it a more attractive lineup. And to me, that is some heavyweights in the corporate world, from whether it's Discovery, whether it's PZM, whether it's FIM, not really getting on very well, and everybody wanting to have a little bit of a piece of the pie and want their say in it. But it is what it is. It is what it is now, which is a phrase that you hear all the time. Not sure I'm really in love with it, but as I say, it's just a little bit disappointing that we haven't got a lineup, because when you talk about Sayfutdinov and Laguta, well, let me put it this way. Kai Hülkenberg, Jan Kvek, I think they were 12th and 15th or something in the series in 2024. The last time that Artem Laguta and Sayfutdinov were in the series, they were 1 and 3.
And on top of that, Laguta in Poland this year, I think for Oslav, he's demolished everybody. I think he finished as the top rider. I don't know if he was top of the Polish averages, but he was certainly like the strongest home rider. He was hardly beaten around Wrocław by anyone, and he was just an absolute machine in Poland. And I think it was clearly there was Smarslik and Laguta, and they were both out there. And the rider that was also up there as well was Sayfutdinov, who of course missed the back end of the season with his injury and so on. But the 3 of those riders are all very much in the same bracket. There is a story as well that Croatia might be able to offer Laguta and Sayfutdinov a way in. That's definitely going on. If they change their nationality or change their license and rode on a Croatian license, because there are some other riders. I think Zagar is going on a Croatian license to get into the Grand Prix qualifiers again. So that is definitely being talked about. So maybe, I don't know, watch that story.
Well, we'll see. I'd like to, before they get past their best, I'd like to see them back in the series, because obviously, time waits for no man, Ian, and it would be a great shame and a travesty in lots of ways that we didn't see Artem Laguta, particularly Artem Laguta. I know that Sayfutdinov is arguably the more popular rider, but Artem Laguta was a world champion. He achieved his dream in 2021 in spectacular fashion. He beat Bartosz Smarslik head to head. I mean, that season has not been surpassed yet. Yeah, it simply hasn't. And for him not to be able to defend it or to make the most of that, I mean, many riders would have found that mentally really difficult to overcome, but he appears to have done, because he's riding in the Extra Liga, arguably the hardest league in the world. he gets the better of Smalsleek regularly. So in that league, he gets the better of him. So you've got to believe that. Well, let's hope. But yeah, the controversy over the lineup, no doubt about that. You know, Leon Madsen is a first reserve, Patrick Dudek a reserve, Woofenden their third reserve, and then so on down. But I thought, actually, just before we finish with that, I thought Jason Doyle might be in trouble. And the reason I thought he might be in trouble is not because he's not a fabulous rider and that he deserves a spot, is that when you got Jack Holder just creeping in Torrent into the top six, because he was on the slide badly, and then you got two Aussie qualifiers from Pardubice, and I thought, will they have four Aussies? Will they put four Australians in when there isn't an Australian round? And they did. And I think that Jason Doyle, for more than one reason, because we've spoken about Laguta and Saifutinov, then the fact that he's got Frick and Kurtz qualifying from Pardubice, he must have been a nervous wreck over that weekend, because his Grand Prix career was literally a roller coaster. But ultimately, I'm delighted he's in. But you've got to agree that 4 Australians in, and when you've only got 2 Polish riders in, you can see that you can understand why there's been some fallout.
Yeah, it's a story that's likely to run and run, I think, isn't it, Kelv? But the other thing as well, I think you're pretty excited about how the meetings are going to end. The change to the final heats, the top 2 scorers from the main meeting go straight through to the final in 2025, and then you've got 2 last chance qualifiers as well. So maybe the days of bumbling on in the middle of the pack for some of the big hitters and just relying on doing well in the semi-final and the final, those days could be numbered now.
I think you're going to see some big hitters miss out, because riders from a psychology point of view, Ian, if you're in the top 10, if you finish 10th, right? If you finish 10th and you're in an LCQ2, okay, for 2025, you're going to take a chance. Simple as that. You've got nothing to lose and everything to gain. You haven't scored many points, but you've still got the chance of scoring 20. You might be in 10th on 4 points, but you've got a chance of scoring 20. And that is a carrot that some of those guys are going to go, well, I'm just going to run over to somebody. I'm just going to run into people, because that's how dramatic it potentially could be. So we're going to build that up. You know what I mean? That is going to be a natural thing, building it up on the broadcast. So all of these things, I hope it doesn't become a carnage. I really do. But there's no doubt that the way they've set it up is for more drama and more potentially dramatic acts, and more surprises, making it more unpredictable. To get to an LCQ, because like Bartosz Smalsleek didn't often top score last year, did he? He was like struggling at times just to make semi-finals. So he's going to have to up his game.
It's going to be interesting, isn't it? And I think, as you say, we could see some of these big hitters dramatically dumped out. You know, the amount of points you've got once you get to the last chance qualifiers, they're out the window as they were previously. But a second place isn't going to be enough. It's all about the win. And when you look at some of the previous meetings where it comes down to semi-finals and riders coming through in a second place, that won't be enough anymore. It's going to be all about the win, and ideally all about winning the main event as such as well, and not relying on the last chance qualifiers.
Yeah. And as I say, for me, I'd hate that as a rider. But there's no doubt that particularly if you are, a rider that is expected to do well in the championship, but that is going to put pressure on, no question about it. And it will give a new dynamic to semi-finals, which are generally, exciting, aren't they? The last 3 heats are always exciting, but it will give those last few races, certainly the last 2 races before the final, a dynamic that we haven't seen in Grand Prix before. So I hope that it works. I really do. But again, I don't really have too many preconceived ideas. I think just doing this podcast with you, it's just got my mind running a bit, and I can see that there could be potentially some, there could be some first corner action that's pretty lively.
Certainly could be pretty tasty. My thanks to Kelvin Tatum for joining us on No Brakes, No Fear, looking ahead to the Speedway Grand Prix of 2025. You can hear more of Kelvin's thoughts in Kelvin's own podcast, which is called Tatum Talks, and that will be available later this week, depending on when you're listening to this, where we look at the lineup in a bit more detail and a few other things besides. But the Speedway Grand Prix series gets underway at Landshut in Germany, 3rd of May, and then going to Warsaw, the Czech Republic, and then, of course, Manchester on the 14th of June. And the other big date for your diary, of course, in the UK is the 16th of August in Cardiff at the Principality Stadium. 2 Grand Prix, and that, again, is something else we discuss in Kelvin's own podcast. So, in the final part, we'll have a look at some of the lineups in the Cab Direct Championship and in the National League so far, and hear from a couple of riders involved. Not least, we'll hear from Charles Wright, and we'll hear from Tom Spencer, who is making the move from the Leicester Cubs in the National League to the Middlesbrough Tigers, as well as doubling up with the Redcar Bears as well. All on the way in No Brakes, No Fear.
This episode is brought to you by Allstate. Some people just know they could save hundreds on car insurance by checking Allstate first, like you know to check the date of the big game first before you accidentally buy tickets on your 20th wedding anniversary and have to spend the next 20 years of your marriage making up for it. Yeah, checking first is smart. So check Allstate first for a quote that could save you hundreds. You're in good hands with Allstate. Savings vary. Terms apply. Allstate Fire and Casualty Insurance Company and Affiliates. Northbrook, Illinois.
This year, Santa's bringing the power of Energizer into his workshop.
Whoa, the Energizer Bunny's got so much power.
Wait, he's powered up all the toys. I think that means we're done for the year.
I love this bunny.
He's the hardest working helper the North Pole has ever seen. And he wants all your gifts to have the power of the #1 longest lasting AA battery. So this holiday season, stock up on Santa's and the elves' favorite battery, Energizer Ultimate Lithium.
So, you want to be a marketer. It's easy. You just have to score a ton of leads and figure out a way to turn them all into customers. Plus, manage a dozen channels, write a million blogs, and launch 100 campaigns all at once. When that's done, simply make your socials go viral and bring in record profits. No sweat. Okay, fine. It's a lot of sweat. But with HubSpot's AI-powered marketing tools, launching benchmark-breaking campaigns is easier than ever. Get started at HubSpot.com/marketers.
No Brakes, No Fear. The official British Speedway podcast.
Okay, looking at the Cab Direct Championship for 2025 then, and the result of discussions at the AGM led to the following situation. Now, it's the same clubs, nothing new. So we've got Berwick, Edinburgh, Glasgow, Oxford, Plymouth, Poole, Redcar, Scunthorpe and Workington. Interestingly, though, the points limit, always a discussion. What's the points limit going to be? People are wondering and guessing. Well, wonder no more, because the points limit is 40 points, and that's across the 7 riders. And this has been fixed for the next 3 years, so you will not be guessing what the points limit is for this time next year or the year after. So for the next 3 years, the points limit will be 40, and that will not be changing. And that helps, of course, planning for the next year and having discussions with riders. So clubs all know what they're going to be dealing with moving forward. So the draw has also been done for the Knockout Cup, the preliminary round, Edinburgh versus Workington. And then the rest straight into the quarterfinals. You've got Scunthorpe versus Oxford, Berwick versus Redcar, Poole versus Plymouth, and then Glasgow versus Edinburgh or Workington. So a bit of a local derby in prospect there as well, as most of those are, really, through the course of those first rounds. And then also the draw for the BSN Series has been done, but nothing really changed from last year. The BSN Series will be back into the regional groups, and the Scottish group will feature, of course, can you guess? Berwick, Edinburgh and Glasgow. The Northern group will consist of Redcar, Scunthorpe and Workington. And the Southern group will be Oxford, Plymouth and Poole, of course. And then there's a few other meetings to tell you about as well. A bit of a change in things, as we touched on earlier with the Grand Prix situation, the traditional pairs tournament. The eve of the Grand Prix is gone on that weekend at least, but it has moved to the start of the season. So the championship pairs will take place at Workington on Saturday, April the 5th. That's a 3 o'clock start. So we're one of the season's openers, really. Workington on Saturday, April 5th for the pairs. Then the day after, Sunday, April the 6th at 3 p.m, it's the Championship League Riders Championship, the CLRC, just 24 hours later, and that will be at Scunthorpe. The Eddie Wright Raceway, the venue for that. So a big weekend. I did think originally it might be the Easter weekend, but it's not the Easter weekend. That's a couple of weeks after. So Saturday, April 5th, Championship Pairs. Sunday, April 6th, Championship League Riders Championship at Scunthorpe. So that's a big weekend of action there to look forward to. So we know the teams that are going to be competing, but what about the makeup of those teams? Well, the teams have been announced, of course, slowly but surely over the last few weeks or so, and this is how things are looking so far. Some of these teams are complete, some still have a bit of a way to go. We'll start with Berwick, who so far have announced Drew Kemp, Daniel Hume, Rory Schlein, Craig Cook and Bastian Bork. So they've got, 5 named so far, so still a couple to go there for Berwick. Still some announcements to be made for Edinburgh as well. Justin Sedgman, Victor Palavara makes a return to British Speedway. Jonathan Gran, who is a new rider to British Speedway, and Kai Thompson, also named in the Edinburgh Monarchs lineup. We've got the full 7 for the Glasgow Tigers, and they'll be made up of Chris Harris, of course, bomber returning at number 1. Kyle Howarth makes the move to the Glasgow Tigers from the Scunthorpe Scorpions. Dan Thompson, also a newcomer to Glasgow. He's going to be in the Tigers lineup. Leon Flint returns. Ashton Bowsian. Now, this is one to talk about potentially between yourselves, but he was announced as a rider for the Oxford Cheetahs to begin with, and then he's now moved to the Glasgow Tigers. Freddie Hodder moves to Glasgow from Berwick, and Max Perry, of course, who started the season last season with the Poole Pirates, lines up for the Glasgow Tigers. So that's their 7 riders. The Oxford Cheetahs, they are now complete as well. Sam Masters returns, as does Luke Colleen, Jordan Jenkins and Cameron Heaps. Dan Gilks, who was with the Cheetahs at the back end of the season, went through the playoffs, is now a fully fledged Cheetah. And the other 2 riders, Jonas Knudsen lines up for the Oxford Cheetahs. And Mitch McDermott, who is a newcomer to British Speedway, a hot sensation in Australia. You may have seen him racing, but there was a recent event, I think it was the Western Australian Championships, that he won, and that qualified him for the visa. In doing that, he beat Luke Colleen and Jacob Hook, so he certainly got the better of Luke Colleen that night in Perth in Australia just a few weeks ago. So he gets his British debut as a result and qualifies for his visa, and he'll certainly be one to watch. So the Poole Pirates, reigning champions, of course, treble winners in 2024. Bit of familiarity here and a few returning names as well. We've got Richard Lawson, of course, back in the side. Zach Cook, he's returning, even though his brother, of course, now is leaving Championship Speedway as a whole to move on to new pastures in Europe. But Zach Cook will also be taking over the captaincy of the Poole Pirates as well. Tobias Thompson returns for the Pirates. Louis Kerr, now I think he has had a brief spell with the Pirates in the past, but he's a fully fledged Pirate in 2025. And Anders Rowe, having missed out last season, is back with the Poole Pirates once again. They still have a few names to announce yet. Where next? Let's go to Workington. The Workington Comets, of course, they made the playoffs last season, and, you have to say that a bit more power in their team. Then, of course, they were hit by injuries as well towards the end of the season, and they certainly had an impressive first year back at championship level, and they've got a few returning faces as well. Tate Zischke will be back in the Workington Comets lineup, as will Antti Vulas Troy Batchelor returns, and he'll be taking over the captaincy of the Workington Comets in 2025. And some new faces for the Comets as well. Jacob Hook will be making the move, the latest to be announced. Jay Etheridge comes in from the Berwick Bandits, and Vinnie Ford will move from the Poole Pirates to Workington Comets. And a new face, another Australian rising star, Fraser Bowes, will be joining the Workington Comets, another highly rated Australian rider. So again, just like Tate Zischke did in 2024, Fraser Bowes could be a name to look out for in 2025. The Scunthorpe Scorpions, Luke Harrison will be returning. Simon Lambert, Jake Allen, Connor Mountain, and returning face in Zane Kennedy, whose previous stint with the Scunthorpe Scorpions was ended in fairly spectacular fashion when he went through the air fence and unfortunately departed in an air ambulance. And now he's back to full fitness, and he's bringing his brother as well. Declan Kennedy will be joining the Scunthorpe Scorpions, and their big signing in the close season is Steve Worrell, who's back in Speedway. Great to see Stevie back. Of course, he had to have some time out through illness last season. He was racing for the Glasgow Tigers and the Birmingham Brummies. He's giving Premiership Speedway a miss, at least so far, and will be lining up for the Scunthorpe Scorpions, which is a track pretty local to where he lives as well. So he's had a bit of a reset and looking to come back swinging with the Scunthorpe Scorpions in 2025. The Plymouth Gladiators have announced a few of their riders. They've still got a fair few to go yet, but they've announced the signings of Joe Thompson, who returns for 2025, along with Alfie Botel, and they've also recently announced Lasse Fredriksson, who was previously with the Edinburgh Monarchs. Will be lining up for the Plymouth Gladiators. You can get much further away from Edinburgh, but that's where he's heading. And finally, the Redcar Bears, they announced their lineup at the weekend, and here is their full 7. Charles Wright will return as captain, along with Danny King. Jason Edwards comes back as well, so does Jake Mulford. And a returning face, and this was a big signing and got a big cheer when it was announced, Eric Riss is back in Championship Speedway with the Redcar Bears. And a couple of new faces as well. Ace Piper makes the move to Redcar. Of course, he was with the Glasgow Tigers last season. And Tom Spencer gets his debut at championship level properly with the Redcar Bears. Previously, he's been riding with the Leicester Cubs in the National League. And he'll also be doubling up with the Middlesbrough Tigers in the National League as well, as will Ace Piper. Incidentally, his brother Steen Piper will also be riding for them as well. Let's hear a couple of interviews from that night then. First of all, the returning captain, Charles Wright.
Yeah, I think it's me 7th or 8th year here. It feels like home for me, and I know everybody at the club, and you know it's a good club to ride for, and I feel settled here, so why change?
Well, indeed, and looking at the lineup for 2025, which has been announced tonight, and it's a pretty exciting lineup. I know that Gavin Parr was excited about last year's lineup, and it all kind of went wrong at the last second, perhaps with injuries and other changes and what have you, but hopefully this time all looking good.
Yeah, that's it. It was a big letdown to us. You know, we had a team in place for this year, and we're quite happy with it, and it all went wrong at the last minute, with obviously Thomas not being able to ride, and you know it was very hard, and we start the season we had a lot of young lads in our team, and you know it showed a bit in the season, and you know we started off slow and then picked up, made a few changes towards the end of the year, but you know it was too late, too much damage was done too early on. But you know with the likes of me, Danny and Eric this year, we've got a solid top 3 in the team, and you know we should be able to carry the team, and with the younger lads coming on with Jake and Jason in the team, so I think you know we've got a lot of potential there now to go all the way.
And looking at it as well, you know, obviously it didn't work out, but took Poole very close. Same for Oxford as well. So you certainly held it close with the big hitters in the league.
Yeah, our away form was really good. You know, and we just lost a few. It failed away towards the end at home, but on the road we did really well, to be fair. And like I say, we went to Poole when I thought we should have beat them, and we just let it go at the last minute. But you know, we were just there, but not close enough. But hopefully this year it won't come to that.
And looking at the team lineup, it seems pretty strong as well. You've got experience, you've got youth, but you've got youth with experience as well. So it's a strong mix.
Yeah, me, Danny and Eric, we know our way round and we'll always help the younger lads and stuff. And the main thing is good team spirit, and we all know each other pretty well by now, so that's going to help going into next season.
So there with the experience of Charles Wright in the red car lineup, and he mentioned the younger lads, one of which, of course, is Tom Spencer, who makes the move to championship level speedway properly in 2025, riding with the red car Bears and also doubling up with the Middlesbrough Tigers as well. And I had a quick chat with Tom about his experiences last year and how that sets him up for making the move to the championship.
It'll be my first full season in Championship. Had a few guest bookings last year with another club. They went well, so it's a logical step. I had 4 good years in National League, good few wins with my team in that, so see what happens here then.
And obviously this is, see what happens here then, like it. But obviously that's always the aim, isn't it, to progress through. Tell us about your experiences in the National League and how that sets you up now for the next step and what you're likely to face.
Yeah, so National League, I've been with Leicester for 4 years. We won the league twice. I know what it's like to win at that level, but I've never experienced it at this level, so it'll be nice to try and do that this year with the good team we've got.
Yeah, and looking round, obviously you're going to face you've got some experience already, but you're going to face a different calibre of rider here now, aren't you? You've got a couple of British champions in your side, but you've got riders with heaps of experience, ex-Grand Prix riders and so on, so it's a bit different from the National League.
Yeah, definitely, but with having those riders in your team, you get their experience, they help you out. I've already had a good few tips off people, so it's a good start. It's only December, so still 3 months to go.
And you've got the opportunity, I guess, to kick on even further and put yourself in the shop window for, potentially Premiership, stuff like that, rising star positions and so on.
Yeah, definitely rising star. I'm classed as a 1-star rider, so it's low average if a team wanted to build big somewhere, so there's always an opportunity.
Yeah, and a few months to go, but the preparation's well underway. I guess you're ordering bits for bikes and all sorts now. Tell us about the plans.
Yeah, they've got 3 bikes ordered, all new kit, all new engines, so spending the money, but you got to do it if you want to be at this level, so see how it goes.
Speculate to accumulate.
Yeah, sure.
All right, good luck for next year.
Thank you.
Says Tom Spencer on the subject of the National Development League. The structure is going to expand in 2025, featuring more clubs, more track time for the sport's young riders. All 6 competing teams from 2024 are going to return, whilst 5 more clubs will enter the NDL system. A new national trophy competition has been formed. So 2 competitions, same points limit and regulations, but they're going to run as separate entities. Therefore, it is possible that you can have riders signing for a club in both the National Development League and in the National Trophy. So it gives riders extra track time. Points limit for both competitions has been set at 38, and both will be settled on a league-only basis of 1 home and 1 away match against each opponent, with the league leaders declared champions. National Development League will look as it did with Bellevue Colts. We've got Edinburgh, Leicester, Middlesbrough, Oxford and the Scunthorpe Sheffield side. And then the National Trophy will feature Birmingham, the Kent Eagles, Kings Lynn, which is still subject to confirmation, but also Plymouth and Workington will be putting a team in for that as well. So a good spread of National League level action. Here's how the sides look so far. Still fairly tentative. We've not got many riders announced in this as yet. But we know that Ben Trigger is going to be riding for the Leicester Cubs. That's been announced this week. Oxford will feature Ashton Vale, Senna Summers, Jody Scott and Jacob Clouting in their side. Kent Eagles have announced Ben Morley and Jamie Etherington so far. And for the National Development League, we've got the Middlesbrough Tigers. They announced their lineup at the team announcement as well, alongside the Red Car Bears. So their team will be Tom Spencer, Steen Piper, Danny Phillips, Jamie Halder, Ace Piper, Kai Ward and Ben Rathbone and Brian Turner will be taking over as team manager for the Red Car Bears. So that's their full 7. They're, I think, the only side to have named their full 7 at this moment in time, at least. So that's how things will look in the National Development League. And that really rounds things up as far as we go at this moment in time for what we know in British Speedway. And just leaves us to say a very Merry Christmas and a Happy New Year from everyone at British Speedway. Before we go, though, just to let you know and remind you that there is Speedway that you can watch on BSN over the festive period, and 2 live meetings from Australia coming your way from Mildura, 29th of December on BSN. You can watch the Phil Crump Solo Classic, which has got a great lineup, including a number of riders that you'll be very familiar with in British Speedway, and of course some of the best of Australia as well. Jan Kvek is in the lineup, Luke Becker, Jamin Lidsey, Brady Kurtz, Rowan Tungate, Tom Brennan, Sam Masters, Justin Sedgman, Ryan Douglas, Jonas Jepsen, Kasper Gruzlek, and Sam Hagen, Fraser Bowes, Luke Colleen, Jack Morrison and Tate Zischke will all be riding in that one. Tasty lineup, isn't it? And they've also got the Young Guns in there as well, which features Mitchell McDermott. Quite a few people will be interested to see how he goes. Dale Wood, Matt Marsden, Jack McDermott, Mitch's brother, Harry Sadler, just to name some of the upcoming stars that'll be in that as well. So you can watch that on BSN. It'll be bright and early in the morning, something like 7 o'clock or so. I think the main event is around about 8:30 UK time. And the broadcast actually is due to begin at 7:30 on that morning of the 29th of December. The week after that, exactly a week later, on the 5th of January, we've got round 2 of the Australian Championships, also from Mildura, which is like a who's who of Australian Speedway. I think everyone, unfortunately, Jason Doyle has withdrawn from that, I think, or he's not taking part in that. But everyone else that you can think of who's Australian is probably going to be in there. So that is a good lineup. Again, that's the 5th of January. So Speedway coming your way over the festive period. And of course, BSN have released their passes for Premiership and Championship Speedway. Another 58 meetings in total on BSN in 2025. And the passes are on sale now. So get yourself onto those, or maybe for an ideal gift for someone over Christmas. There you go. I've helped you out there. Thanks again for joining us, and we'll speak to you soon on the next episode in 2025. Take care. Bye-bye and happy Christmas.
No brakes, no fear. The official British Speedway podcast.
This podcast is part of the Sports Social Podcast Network.
Hello, it is Ryan, and I was on a flight the other day playing one of my favorite social spin slot games on ChumbaCasino.com. I looked over at the person sitting next to me, and you know what they were doing? They were also playing Chumba Casino. Everybody's loving having fun with it. Chumba Casino is home to hundreds of casino-style games that you can play for free anytime, anywhere. So sign up now at ChumbaCasino.com to claim your free welcome bonus. That's ChumbaCasino.com and live the Chumba life.
Sponsored by Chumba Casino. No purchase necessary. VGW Group. Void where prohibited by law. 18+. Terms and conditions apply.